Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the Riverwood Conservancy's latest Facebook Live broadcast. My name is Rashid Clark, a marketing specialist at the Riverwood Conservancy, joined today by Dave Taylor for another wonderful presentation, I'm sure. Thanks so much for joining us today on a very unseasonably warm day here in the city of Mississauga. So if you're staying indoors and joining us for this presentation instead of going outside for the incredibly warm weather, thank you very much for that. We do appreciate your time. And thanks so much for joining us today for what we hope will be another wonderful presentation from Dave. Just a reminder, if you have questions at any point throughout the presentation today on understanding nature, behavioral patterns and functions, please drop them into the comments section. We'll get to your questions as we go through the presentation, as well as at the end, as we have a little Q&A section. And a reminder that we are open again at Riverwood. The park is open to the public. As well, we have a number of public events that have now been scheduled for the month of November. Of course, we'll be doing them very safely with all the COVID-19 protocols in place. So masks, social distancing, small groups, hand sanitizing, all the good stuff to keep everyone safe. But of course, we want to keep you connected to nature, especially now as we are dealing with the ongoing effects of COVID-19 and all the mental health challenges that come with that. So we hope to provide a great space in Riverwood to help people deal with the challenges that they're going through right now. And if you have the financial means to support our work and our ability to help the community and nature in our local area, please do consider giving us a donation at theriverwoodconservancy.org. That's all that I will get to for now, and I will turn things over to Dave Taylor, our wildlife photographer and resident author of more than 40 books on wildlife and ecology. Dave has also produced educational videos and material about wildlife for school curriculums and has taught science and geography for over 30 years, nature photography and writing for over 25 years. So Dave, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you, Rashid, and I'd like to welcome everybody again. It's been over a month since we've done one of these talks, and that's because I've been redoing my office space and trying to get things set up. So hopefully things will work out. If you're lucky today, you're out for a walk, and if you're walking at Riverwood, you might be enjoying the beautiful forest and hopefully trying to see a deer or some other wildlife. And really what we're going to talk today about is understanding that world that surrounds you when you're out there. When I first walked at Riverwood, I was amazed by how green and wonderful it was. Little did I realize that a lot of the green was garlic mustard, and had no idea of what its role was. I just saw green fields. Today when I walk Riverwood, I have a much different view of it. Instead of seeing old growth forests, I see second growth forest, a property that has been logged and farmed and then is regenerating. Nature is coming back. I see remnants of Carolinian forests that used to be here and then disappeared. I see white-tailed deer, an animal that has been around for about 4 million years and has managed to survive countless changes in the environment. So when you walk these properties, it's good to know a little bit about why it is the way it is. And so we're going to be talking about behavior here, but in a very broad sense. So we'll be talking about plants and we'll be talking about animals. Let's go first of all to Africa. It seems like an odd place to start, but most of what we really begin to understand about ecosystems and animals and wildlife and plants and the way they interact together, we know because of studies that have gone on in the Serengeti since the 50s. It is one of the most studied places, and a lot of our concepts that we hold as true have come from there. Now, as things have gone on, we find that those concepts do not necessarily work everywhere, but they have applications in general. One of the most studied animals, of course, is the wildebeest. And one of the things that we've learned through the years, and the whole study of ecology is a little over 150 years old, we understand that animals have 3 basic needs, and plants too. They need water, they need food, and they need shelter. Those are the 3 things that keep the population going. You take water away, you have a drought, you have widespread death. You take food away, same thing. And if you take their shelter away, So, for instance, right now in the Amazon, they're cutting down huge swaths of forest so that they can graze cattle. But that's removing the shelter from a lot of animals. But if you have those three things, food, water, and shelter, you can do the other thing that's important to life on Earth. One is to find a mate and breed. Second is to give birth. And the third is to raise your offspring. And this allows for your genetic material to be passed along. It allows the ecosystem to function because if a species fails to do this, it disappears. So we no longer have mastodons and mammoths or saber-toothed tigers in North America because they failed to be successful at doing that. There weren't enough of them. They couldn't reproduce. So we have two orders of animals. We have wildebeest, which are plant eaters, and we have cheetahs, which are meat eaters. And we take a look at both of these animals for a second, just to understand something about the basic principle. If you eat plants, you have to eat a lot of plants to get nourishment from them. Even really good plants are not that nourishing. Some are more nourishing than others. That's true. If you're a carnivore, a meat eater, like the cheetah is, you don't have to eat as much material because meat is a more condensed type of food source. So, in the struggle between predator and prey, there is always going to be more of the prey than the predator. If there isn't, we have real problems. So, there's got to be more grass than there is wildebeest. There's got to be more wildebeest than there are cheetahs. And that concept applies to everywhere in the world. And the concept of body form also translates very well across the world. Larger animals that eat plants have larger stomachs. Doesn't matter if you're a monkey, a gorilla, or an elephant, or a wildebeest. Animals that exist mostly on carnivore meat tend to have narrower bodies, slimmer bodies. Think of wolves and cheetahs and lions. But you throw in a bear. You say, well, look, bears are pretty fat. Bears are omnivores. And bears in the spring are quite thin, but they need to bulk up for the winter. And so they will put on hundreds of kilograms of weight before they enter denning. But it is still the actual idea, the concept still applies. So on the plains of Africa, there is a constant struggle. You have to reproduce and you have to raise those young. So the wildebeest give birth, and they give birth in a strategy that just about all the wildebeest give birth at one time. And they do so to overwhelm the predators. So a cheetah or a lion or a hyena has got a smorgasbord set for them. They can eat whenever they want when the babies arrive. The babies are defenseless. Wildebeest won't put up a fight. The babies can't put up a fight. So the cheetahs and the lions and the leopards and all the rest of the predators pick off what they want. But here's the thing. It's a short-lived feast. Once those babies are about 2 weeks old, they can outrun the predators. And hunting and getting food becomes a lot more difficult. Not all animals have babies all at the same time. Humans, for instance, don't have a particular month or two where we give birth every year. White-tailed deer tend to give birth mostly in June. But if you hang around Riverwood long enough, you're going to find some that give birth in August and some that give birth in May. And these dates change, and it's a strategy because what happens is if June is the month, and it seems to be the best month for white-tailed deer, that means there's lots of food for the mother deer to be able to produce the milk that she needs to feed her youngsters. If the baby is born in August, there won't be that same amount of food. And that baby has to get strong enough to survive the winter. So in our neck of the woods, June babies do better than August babies. So why have an August baby? Well, seasons change. Suppose we get into a climate change where we don't have winter anymore. There might be real advantages to being an August baby or a May baby. And that's just one deer. Now, animals like elk, especially in Yellowstone where they're preyed upon by grizzly bears, elk tend to have their babies over a period of a month and a half. They don't sort of just do it within a week or two. This helps them increase the chances of survival because the grizzly bears and the wolves are less likely to be able to find the babies if they're not all of a sudden all over the place. So these strategies go on through nature. We see the same sort of thing in birds. Gannets nest in colonies. They can afford to nest in colonies, that's the white bird, because they live close to the sea and there's ample food. Ospreys don't really nest in colonies. It's usually one nest. Maybe you find a few nests, but the number of nests is determined by the amount of food. So gannets are colonial nesters, but they nest on the ground. They have to deal with predators. If a fox gets onto an island where they're nesting, that can cause quite a number of babies to be taken or eggs destroyed. Whereas an osprey nests at the top of a tall tree or on platforms that we provide. So strategies to survive are important when you look at nature. These are the structures. Now, for something really different, we think of males father, mothers raise. Males may hang around. Among humans, males tend to be around. Among some animals, males are present. But among a lot of animals, males sort of leave once the babies are born. They have nothing to do with them. But in the cassowary, it is the male that raises the female, or raises the eggs. Sorry. The female lays the eggs, the male sits on them, he hatches them, he looks after the babies, and where does mom go? Mom goes off and has a party and finds another mate. But it's a behavior pattern that works for the cassowary. There are not a lot of examples in nature of this kind of behavior, but there are some. Seahorses, male seahorses raise the babies, not the female. We have two types of strategies when we're talking about giving birth. There are K strategists, and they invest a long time raising their offspring. So we, as humans, might raise our offspring for 20 years. Some people might say we raise them a lot longer. Elephants raise their babies for 13, 14 years, about the same length of time it takes a human child to grow up and mature. Grizzly bears raise their young for 3 years before they have other babies. Our strategists are animals that have a lot of babies all at once, sometimes in a million. So you're at Riverwood and you watch the salmon come up the river. Each one of those salmon females is going to lay hundreds of eggs. It only takes one or two of those eggs to survive to adulthood for us to see the migration of salmon again. Wolves raise their pups for a year, and then the pups have a decision to make. If there are not a lot of wolves in an area, the pups will disperse and they will go and find their own territory. If, however, there are areas like in Algonquin Park where there are wolves filling all of the niches available, all of the space available, the pups stay with their parents. Now, it's only the parent wolves that breed. So these other puppies are giving up their right to have their own families. On the other hand, what they are doing is they're ensuring that the genes that they share with these other animals in their pack get passed on. So it's very complex. Do you walk away from your children and just let them go? Or do you spend some time raising them? Two strategies, they both work, but they work in different ways for different animals. And you can find degrees from just let the eggs drift in the ocean, like a lot of crustaceans do. They land where they land, but you've laid millions of them. You have sea turtles that lay their eggs and then leave on the beach, and you have hundreds of them. You have wolves that raise their pups, lions that raise their babies for 3 or 4 years, bears 2 to 3 years. Each strategy has its own advantages. Plants do the same thing. A dandelion lets its seed go anywhere in the world. They just drift off. Others do little tricks to make sure the seed gets a better chance. they produce fruit. So a bear comes along, eats a raspberry, walks along, poops it out miles from where the parent plant was, hopefully in an area where there are no raspberries. So we see what we call bear gardens all over the place up north because bears have carried the seeds there. Elephants eat big seed, goes through their intestines where the shell is softened, and they poop it out and they carry it away. Other plants just let the seeds drop right beneath them, and the plant dies, but the seed germinates, and next year you have the same plant in the same space. Organisms have relationships. The more catfish there are in an area, the more osprey there can be there. We talk about nature's balance, but nature is never in balance. We'd like to think of it this way, but if the prey species, in this case catfish, increase, that allows the osprey to increase. But more osprey, the more catfish. And so, and then the osprey don't have any food. And so there's this constant interchange, this constant battle. If an environmental catastrophe happens and the prey species really declines, the predators will also decline unless they can switch to other food sources. And that's a point maybe to be made here. There isn't a simple answer. Nature is far more complex than we used to think. Things that we used to believe, like the balance in nature, it's a more complicated, it's not as simple as we thought it was. This leads us to talking about food chains. A food chain is where you take three things. Let's take you and me. So I get up in the morning and I have cereal. Now that cereal is a grass. Cereals are made from oats and barley and things like that. Basically, it's grass. Grass is what animals on the Serengeti Plains eat. So I eat grass. So it's a very short food chain. Grass to me, and between the wildebeest and the grass, it's a short food chain. Wildebeest. So now we have three links in our food chain. With humans, there might be three. I might eat a cow.
Hey folks, Rashid here. It looks like we're having a couple of technical issues here with Dave's video, so we're just going to.
I'm back.
And we're back. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll try to get things back together. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a blip there. But Dave, if you don't mind trying to get your screen to share again, because that's what we've lost right now. But we'll pick things up in a minute. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone.
I'm gonna try start it all over again.
Sure, not a problem.
Here we go. Got it.
The beauties of live broadcasting.
Do you see it?
We can. I will put that back in. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
All right. And I will fade off into the background now. And Dave, you are free to resume right now.
Oh, thanks for your patience. This is not as bad as the dinosaur show where you people actually saw me probably melt because it was just such a disaster. Nothing seemed to be working.
There's no need to revisit that part of history, Dave. We're moving forward here. We're moving forward.
All
Everything's
right.
cool. Everything's cool.
Okay. So back to the slideshow. Within an ecosystem, you might have animals, like we say vultures. There's vultures at the kill. But if you really look at it in Africa, there could be upwards to 6 different species of vulture there, each one with a different role. One can open up a carcass, one can get further in, and one can feed on the very, very tiny scraps, And one can feed when there's basically no scraps at all, like the Egyptian vulture. So there are all of these levels in nature. We walk at Riverwood, we see a turkey vulture fly over, we think of it as a vulture, but the turkey vulture is one of 3 species of vulture in North America. We don't see the other 2 here, the others being the black vulture and the condor. The black vulture isn't as good at spotting food or smelling food from the air, so it has to see its food. The turkey vulture can smell food from quite a distance, so they have little tricks. When you take a bunch of food webs, or food chains rather, and you put them all together, you get what's called a food web, or food chain rather. Food chains are really complex. This
And it looks like we've lost Dave's connection once again. Sorry about the technical issues that we're having today. As Dave mentioned off the top of the broadcast, he's recently moved to a new office space, and he's now back in. We'll bring him back into the feed right now. There's
let's
Dave again.
go on the slideshow, and I'll just continue talking without it. I think
You want to give that a try? Sure, let's do that.
sure. It might be. Again, thank you for your patience. I have a slideshow up, so I'm going to continue. So if you get a food chain, and several of them, you get, so they all plants, grass, trees, some of our garden plants. They're eaten by rabbits, deer, mice, and then the rabbits are eaten by the coyotes, the deer are eaten by the coyotes, raccoons get in there, possums get in there. In Africa, it's all of the different species. These levels of food are called trophic levels. And when you put them all together, they form a food pyramid. So at the very bottom of the food pyramid, then you have the plants. That's the first trophic level. Above that, you have the plant eaters. Then you have the carnivores, and they may be in 2 levels. There may be carnivores that eat carnivores. I know that seems strange. And then all of that stuff produces waste. You know, life on Earth basically evolved from a simple organism, and we can see that in ourselves. This organism had a mouth where food went in, and it had an opening where food went out. And that's true of elephants, whales, and us. We eat, consume, and then we produce waste. And that waste is food that nobody can use. It's gone. So for driving all of this is the sun. And the sun's energy comes in, and each time you go up a level in the trophic level, there's energy lost. So plant has to go through photosynthesis. It has to make and store food, but to do that takes energy, and that energy is lost. Some of it just bounces off the sun, off the plant leaves anyhow. When an animal eats a plant, it has to chew. It has to do other things. It has to produce body heat, which is waste material, waste energy. So there's more energy in the plant level. When you get to the plant eater level, there's less energy. When you go up to the next level, there's even less energy. When you get to the very top of the pyramid, the lion in Africa, the coyote in Riverwood, there cannot be very many of them because the energy that takes to fuel that thing is being lost throughout the whole system. So we have maybe 2 adult coyotes that are around, maybe 3 each year, and then their pups. We have upwards to 40 white-tailed deer. We had a really good crop of bunny rabbits this year, cottontails. So those things are fueling, but it only works when you've got enough plant material to feed the cottontails and the deer. And this isn't talking about the 186 species of birds that live at Riverwood. We have about 30 species of mammal. We have about 20 species of fish, probably thousands of species of insects. Each one in one of these levels, each one connected to a food chain, each one connected to a food web, each one in this pyramid of life. So it gets really complex. Move on to another. I just want to talk briefly about plants. So in order to survive, timing is everything. So we talked about how fawns are born in certain years. If you go to Riverwood in the spring, you're going to see trilliums. Not a lot, but there are trilliums there. These plants need a lot of sunlight to grow. So they come out and flower when there's no leaves in the trees and they can get lots of sunlight. Now, if you walk at Riverwood, you're going to see jewelweed. Now, jewelweed can grow in the forests, and it does very well. And it has a really neat way of getting rid of its seeds. If you walk along and you see their seed pods, if you touch the seed pod, just gently tap it, it'll spring open and it will throw the seeds out. That plant is trying to disperse its seeds away from where it's growing, but in the general area because the habitat is good there. Now, if you were to take a look at the forest, if you could see it from the air, you might see that there are bands of trees. Take a walk on the bridge. Go out onto Burnhamthorpe Bridge, look down at Credit River, and you'll see there are pine trees, and you'll see there are stands that appear red or brown in the fall. There might be a stand of oaks, it might be a stand of maples, might
And apologies again. Looks like the internet connection for Dave not so hot today. So we'll just give it another minute or so to see if he's able to rejoin the broadcast. But right now, Dave, if you can't hear us, we have lost your video connection. Hopefully, we'll get you back in a minute. And just a reminder that while we're waiting for these technical issues to hopefully sort themselves out, a reminder that we are having events once again at Riverwood on the property with all proper COVID-19 protocols in place. So we'll have things in small groups, everyone socially distanced, masks are required, hand sanitizing will be mandatory as usual, but we are trying to get people back into the Riverwood property once again with all the safety protocols in place. So if you are interested in having some more guided tours of Riverwood, we do have a number of events happening for the rest of the month of November. So head over to our website at theriverwoodconservancy.org. We'll hopefully get more people coming out to the park over the next few weeks, especially now as we have a wonderful stretch of weather for the next week or so. So by all means, do take advantage of that, come out to the park, but we do ask that you maintain social distance as much as possible with other people, and if possible, wear masks on the trails where distancing is a little bit of an issue because the trails are a little bit on the narrow side. We're still having some technical issues here with Dave's internet connection by the looks of it, so we'll try to hang on for another minute or so before maybe we have to wrap things up for today. Hopefully we'll be able to get his connection back up. Thanks again for joining us today, and apologies for the issues technically with internet connections. Of course, the magic of live broadcasting means that we have to deal with this from time to time. And while we have your attention, at least while I have your attention for maybe a little bit longer, a reminder that we are still dealing with the challenges of COVID-19 financially at the Riverwood Conservancy. So if you have the ability to make a donation, we would very much appreciate it. You can give at theriverwoodconservancy.org and help us continue to have programs like this virtually, as well programs on the property, and to keep our conservation efforts going so that we can keep the wildlife habitat and ecosystems at Riverwood healthy and going strong. It looks as though we are not going to get Dave's video back for today, so I think we might have to just wrap up for the time being. We hope to have another Facebook Live broadcast soon. We might try to do it again when we have a more stable internet connection for Dave and for our guests. And so keep an eye out on our Facebook page as well. We'll have some more information hopefully in the next couple of days if we are going to try to reschedule this talk. But we also have another one coming up with Dave scheduled later in November. So please join us for that on animal tracking. I know we've had a lot of interest in that subject, so we hope to have a better connection when that comes around. So for the time being, unfortunately, we'll have to wrap up a little bit early for today, as we've been able to get Dave's video back on. So we hope to have another more successful broadcast again soon. Keep an eye on our Facebook page as well as our website, theriverwoodconservancy.org, for more information and more information on our events that are happening throughout the month of November, both virtually and in the park. My name is Rashid Clark, the marketing specialist at the Riverwood Conservancy. Tap dancing as long as I can, hoping that Dave comes back, but it looks like that's not going to be the case for today. So we'll unfortunately have to wrap things up a little bit earlier than expected and not under the circumstances that we were hoping for. But thank you so much for joining us today. Hope that you were able to enjoy the part of the presentation where Dave was on and actually talking about wildlife, and we hope to see you again soon. In the meantime, stay safe and talk to you again soon. Take care.